This week on Roofing News, we're going to talk about California fires. California wildfires have destroyed thousands of homes. What does it mean for the insurance market? We asked two experts to debate each other. If you like what we're doing, give us a like down below and comment your feedback. What do you think about California fires? And if you have news to share, send it to sydney@roofinginsights.com. Now let's get to the story.
Insurance.
The big story this week, obviously, is the California wildfires. The damage has been devastating. The people are concerned about what it means for the home insurance crisis. More importantly, they want to know how to fix it. It's a complicated issue, so we talked to experts on both sides. But first, here's a quick reminder of what's happening. The LA fires have destroyed 12,000 buildings and caused an estimated $10 to $20 billion in policyholder losses. Total economic losses could be as high as $150 to $200 billion. In the last 3 years, major insurers like State Farm and Allstate have left California and dropped thousands of policyholders. Premiums have risen 48% in the past 5 years. More people are being forced into the state's emergency fare plan. 10% of California homes have no insurance at all. Insurance companies have been asking to use predictive catastrophe modeling in California to reduce wildfire losses. A new rule will allow it, but it requires insurance companies to offer coverage in high-risk areas. The Senate released a report saying non-renewals and premium increases are the result of a climate change. Insurer says regulation, inflation, and excessive litigation are also to blame. With everything that's going on, we called two experts. Quinn is a consumer advocate and the founder of the American Policyholder Association. Steve Badger is a partner at Zell Law Firm and represents commercial insurance companies.
Hurricanes, more hailstorms, floods, and now wildfires once again. It all relates back to extreme weather conditions that is putting the insurance industry at risk. Now, as a secondary factor, I think there is an issue with regulation that has to be addressed. There has to be a realization that climate risk and climate change is real. It's affecting the insurance markets, and we cannot continue to regulate the insurance markets. And we can talk about what's happened in California to a degree where insurance companies simply don't want to insure risk there any longer. So in my view, it's a combination of both, but the underlying factor is the climate change that we're experiencing in this world.
I would agree. Listen, climate change is a very, controversial hot button for many people. But I do know whether you think it's man-made or act of God or natural cycles, I think we can all agree there is some shifting in the climate going on right now. And it's certainly increasing the perils in the insurance market and natural disasters, both in frequency and intensity. And no conversation about what's going on in the insurance market is complete unless we talk about mitigation against climate risk. So I would certainly say that's the biggest risk. That's where we start. And we should put more focus on how do we mitigate that risk? How can we be proactive to minimize the risk rather than putting so much focus on what do we do to pay for the losses after they happen?
What impact will the fires have on homeowners and insurers in California after this?
Well, there's no question there's going to be a dramatic impact. This will be the wake-up call for the California insurance market that something has to be done. We've heard so much in the past week about everything that led up to this. Carriers stepping out of the market, increased premiums, non-renewals. Now this is at the front of everyone's thinking, and something's going to have to change. What is that? I think we're going to have to see a reduction in the regulation that's going to allow insurers to capture premium that reflects the risk they are insuring. Otherwise, they're simply going to not insure this market. Now, Doug and I can debate and discuss what's a reasonable profit for insurers and those issues. But what I think is important, I saw a statistic yesterday that really was telling for me that for the last decade, insurance companies in California paid $1.09 for every dollar they brought in for the past 10 years. That's not a sustainable model. Dimitri, if your roofing contractors were told that they could only charge $300 a square when they knew that it was going to cost them $500 a square to put on those shingles, how do you think those roofing contractors would react? They wouldn't be happy. They'd stop putting roofs on in that state that wouldn't let them charge a sustainable price. And I think now we're at an inflection point where we're going to see some changes in California.
Doug?
Steve, real quick, the $1.09 versus the dollar, is the dollar brought in premium dollars, or is that total profits?
It's premium versus claim.
Okay, so and the one thing I would caution about that, it's probably outside of the scope of what we're talking about now, is there are many, many different ways to measure insurance profitability, and there's combined ratio, and there's underwriting losses, and we know insurance companies have many ways that they make money. Spending 9 cents more than they're bringing in on the premium end does not necessarily mean that, we haven't factored in the investment portfolios and the profits that they bring in from outside and open market operations. However, we're all here because we believe in healthy, resilient insurance markets. So we certainly want to make sure that the insurance markets are functioning properly. I'm a capitalist as much as anybody else. They are certainly entitled to a reasonable profit for their efforts. Again, how much is reasonable is not. And certainly we'd like to make sure that those profits are earned in an ethical fashion, just like we would want from the roofing industry. I would certainly say the impact from the homeowners, and Steve touched on the impact for the insurance industry quite well. It's going to be significant. There's going to have to be planning going forward because on some levels, moving the way we are is not sustainable for the long run. So obviously there's changes that have to be made. For the homeowners, the impact is going to be devastating. Even for the real estate market, the amount of people who will not be able to get insurance and therefore they will not be able to get mortgages. It's going to have an impact on property values all the way across the board. And certainly, we talk a lot about money, but the impact on human life is first and foremost. If you're not mitigating, if you're not building a defensible structure, if you're not retrofitting your home against what is the prevailing risk in your area or prevailing risks, plural, you're putting yourself and your family at risk. It's not just your home. It's not just money. I would say there's a couple of people, a couple of sectors of stakeholders that have not taken up the mantle of responsibility. And let's be honest, the homeowners are one of them. Homeowners need to make sure they are building defensible structures. They are spending the extra money. They are retrofitting to make sure their home is protected, especially in a scenario where, if you're in a fire. I've been to every kind of natural disaster all over the country. Fire is the worst. I lost my home in a flood. I was able to go through and pick out some soggy pictures and dry them out and, recover some things. Fire leaves you a foundation and a chimney. And if your house isn't a total loss, what the fire didn't destroy, the smoke contaminated and the water destroyed. So the impact, not just on your family and human life, but on your home, on the local economy, on the insurance industry, it hurts all of us. And certainly, we'll be in LA tomorrow in LA County dealing with fire survivors. I expect to see that same traumatized shock look in the eyes. I was in the Woolsey fire in Malibu in 2018. And, we're all kind of like, all right, they're billionaires, no big deal. But those people have that same shocked look in their face as I see poor people in the bayous of Louisiana, as I see people on the beach in Florida. It's no different because they've been through a significant trauma. And for many of these people, there's going to be a line in their life before the fire and after the fire, and they will never be the same. Their life will never be the same. Incidents of PTSD amongst children are close to 50%. The adults, the first responders, the strain on the fire services, what these people go through, it's devastating. And again, I can't say it enough. This country needs to emphasize mitigation and building defensible structures and being proactive to the level of national defense, because it really is national defense, and we're just not talking enough about it.
I would like to compare it to recent events. Internet compares a lot what happened in Carolinas. You know, the floods. They say, well, we pay attention here because it's Hollywood, it's rich, it's burned, right? How is it different from 50, $60 billion losses that we have earlier in the year in Carolina? You know, because as far as devastation, it's very similar. From insurance perspective, are they pulling out from other areas too? I know Steve said, gave example of losses in California, but California is not the only high risk for them. There's also other areas in the country. Florida is one of them too.
Yeah, let's look at all the different insurance markets across the country that are at risk. Florida, hurricanes. Louisiana, hurricanes. Texas, hurricanes and hail. Colorado, wildfires and hail. California, wildfires and potentially earthquakes. These are all the states where natural disasters greatly increases the risk to insurance companies by insuring risk in those areas. And that is just the simple bottom line of what's happening.
Is it fair to make insurers cover high risk areas? Seems like that's the direction the government is taking, kind of enforce them. Hey, you can't just pull out, you have to honor it. You make money in Minnesota, cover wildfires in California. What's your answer to that?
Doug, you go first.
I've seen precedents on this. Fair or not fair, I don't know about those terms, but we had seen it in New Jersey here in the 80s with the auto insurance market, where we saw companies want to pull out because it was incredible. It's a very populated state, populated by very aggressive people, aggressive drivers. It's one of the highest income states, so there's a lot of capital on the roads and vehicles. And the insurance market here in the 80s was an absolute mess, and some companies wanted to pull out. And the state of New Jersey said, hey, that's fine. You can pull out of auto insurance, but you're going to take the more profitable lines. You're going to go all together. You're not going to be selling annuities. You're not going to be doing property and casualty, which was profitable back then. You're going to, so you can certainly pull one line, but we're not going to allow you to cherry pick. I don't know if in a free society, it's okay to tell a business, you have to do business here. I don't know if I agree with that. But insurance commissioners certainly have the right to say, hey, you have to look at your overall profits in this state. You can't just look at this one line. And if you're going to pull the one line that's not profitable, maybe we're not going to let you come and, load up the truck and take the money out for the other lines.
Steve?
I don't have any problem. I don't have any problem with an insurance commissioner telling an insurance company in Texas that if you're going to insure risk here, you need to insure risk across the state. However, that insurance commissioner must allow two things to happen. Number one, for the insurance company to charge individuals in the high risk areas a higher premium. If you're going to live on the coast, you ought to pay a little more than the guy who lives somewhere else. And number two, the insurance companies have to be allowed to charge a premium collectively across the state that will allow them to reasonably cover the collective risk they've been asked to insure. And I think that's the key issue here, that in California, the companies have not had adequate premium to cover the risk they've been asked to insure. So as Doug says, free market capitalism, but the insurance I recognize is a little different. We're in a unique role. So I understand the desire to regulate us, and I accept that, but we have to be able to charge premium based on the risk we insure.
What changes are needed to make competitive insurance options available again? Because a lot of people cannot afford it anymore. Like, the rates are so high. How do we, bring it down?
You know what I'm going to say, because I'm just going to be the broken record for personal mitigation and building defensible structures. I always think all conversations start with that. And we know that premium changes inspire behavior. So certainly watching the premiums go up to the point where people are struggling financially to, we don't want to see people in a position where they're choosing between putting food on the table or paying their insurance premium, because we know what happens. They drop the insurance. I'm seeing more and more people when I go to cat zones who do not have insurance, not just flood insurance. They're not carrying any kind of insurance. So, we certainly don't want the consumer to be in that position. But we also know that the consumers need to take personal responsibility and make sure that they're protecting their homes. We don't want to put undue risk on the community. It's not fair to put undue risk on the insurance industry. And then I'll go the other way on the regulation. We do have to sort of have these insurance companies give the premium discounts where people are investing the capital and the effort to mitigating their homes. I think Florida, you won't often hear me say a lot of good things about the Florida insurance market, but the My Safe Florida Home program is excellent. Obviously, they don't have enough capital to do it for everybody, but they were able to do matching funds for people that have better roofs, to have better windows. And they also put it in where it's mandatory for the insurance companies to give premium discounts for people who have invested that money and that energy to make their structures safer.
What we call resiliency is spot on. After every event, what do we see in the news? We see that one house along the coast that isn't damaged. Why? Because they actually fortified their house and built a resilient home. After a hail event, which houses are not hail damaged? It's the ones sometimes with class 4 hail rated roofing. And in California, we just saw the amazing photograph of the one house that wasn't damaged in a neighborhood. Why not? Because he installed a sprinkler system on his roof and under the eaves that it turned on as soon as the fire got close. So we can address these issues through better building codes and better work by homeowners to spend the money on the front end to address this. And yes, if someone does those things, they should receive a premium discount. Just like class 4 hail rated roofing is provided a premium discount in Texas. We should do that. But we have to have the difficult dialogue in this country now about building resilient housing.
They made a lot of good points, but I wanted to bring in one more opinion. Vince Perri is a public adjuster. He ended up in California last week by chance. Here's what he saw and what he thinks about the crisis.
The impact on homeowners is obviously huge. As soon as we got there, it was like a madhouse in the hotel. And apparently the reason was because a lot of the evacuees were going to all the hotels to stay. So I had some conversations with people. Most of the people that I had conversations with, they felt pretty confident that their houses were going to be okay, but they were pretty concerned. Some of them also were very concerned about would they have a house when they returned. And as far as the insurance market's going to be concerned, I mean, they're saying this is like the biggest one ever, because you're not just dealing like with hurricanes, you're dealing with like some areas that got impacted, but even the areas that get severely impacted, it's still not nearly as bad as a fire. Like when you look at, we drove by some neighborhoods where it was like wiped out completely. Like just like all you see is like wooden stilts and just like random like things, and it's pretty wild to see that. And I think that what they're saying is it's going to be huge. It's going to be very costly for the insurance company. That who knows what's going to happen? Is the insurance market going to still be around? I mean, what I'm looking at, this is like reckless speculation. This is based on no fact whatsoever. Just the feeling that I've got. I mean, I just think that insurance is just going to be completely run by the government eventually. Like, I don't think there's going to be a private market. Owning an insurance company is one of the best businesses that you could have, because somebody only suffers a claim once or twice in their life and they're continuing to accept insurance premiums. It's like a great business, but it might not be as great a business model as it used to be.
Vince also have some advice for anyone dealing with the fire damage right now.
I mean, honestly, I feel for the people in California. Again, I was there, and I mean, a lot of people lost a lot. And my final thoughts are, believe it or not, if you think that you have a legitimate, obvious, in the bank, total loss, insurance company is going to pay for everything no matter what, think twice. From my experience, as long as they're sending an adjuster out to your property that really doesn't know the first thing about construction, they're still having to write an estimate up. And if that estimate doesn't equate or hit your policy limit, guess what? It's not a total loss like you thought. I've seen houses completely off of their foundation that were not a total loss. So my advice is get a public adjuster, interview a couple of public adjusters that you know, that you maybe hopefully can trust, that will ultimately do the best by you. And quite frankly, a lot of these fire losses, most public adjusters are probably going to charge around 10%. They may charge around 15% in California. They can charge up to, I don't believe there's a limit, but more than likely, you're probably going to get around 10, 15%. Let me tell you something. I am super biased, but I believe in what I do. If it were me, in a heartbeat, the 10%, it's more than worth it. You could guarantee you're going to get 50 to 100 to 200% more just by hiring a professional to represent you. So that's what I would suggest, especially right now.
This is it for this week. Who do you agree with? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more roofing insights. See you in the next video.